There's a strange thing your brain does. Give it a choice between a painful outcome it has already survived and a better outcome it has never experienced, and more often than you'd expect, it chooses the pain. Not because it likes pain, because familiar pain comes with something your brain values even more than happiness, certainty, and to your brain, uncertainty is often more dangerous than sadness ever was. If you're the kind of person who wants to understand what's actually driving behavior you can't fully explain, consider subscribing. Now, let's get into why. Think about the moment you had something to say and didn't say it. Not because you lacked the words. You had the words. You just knew somewhere underneath conscious thought exactly how the room would react if you said them, and staying quiet felt safer than finding out you were right. Think about the reflex to apologize first, even before you know whether you actually did anything wrong. It isn't weakness. It's a shortcut. Somewhere along the way, your mind learned that going first and taking the blame ends conflict faster than waiting to see how it unfolds. Think about something even stranger. The anxiety that shows up not when life is falling apart, but when it finally isn't. When things go quiet, when nothing is wrong. For some people, that peace doesn't feel like relief. It feels like the calm before something, because their mind has never been given evidence that fine simply gets to stay fine. Think about staying in a job that drains you long after you've admitted to yourself that it does. The job is known. Its disappointments are known. Every bad day inside it is at least a bad day you've already survived 100 times before. And think about the pattern that's hardest to say out loud. Going back to a relationship you already know isn't good for you. Not because you don't see it clearly. Often you see it more clearly than anyone else does. You go back anyway because the specific shape of that particular pain is at least a shape you recognize. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. You already know the unknown alternative doesn't come with that guarantee. If any of that sounds less like weakness and more like a strategy, you're closer to the truth than most explanations give you credit for. Here's the mechanism underneath all 5 of those. Psychologists call it predictive safety. Your brain's central task, more than making you happy, more than making you comfortable, is making the world predictable. A brain that can accurately guess what happens next is a brain that can prepare, and preparation to something built for survival matters more than pleasure ever will. So your brain isn't ranking outcomes by how good they feel. It's ranking them by how confidently it can predict them. And painful outcomes. It has survived before rank higher on that scale than unfamiliar outcomes that might technically be better. Picture a ship still using a map drawn years earlier. The captain knows the coastline has shifted. New charts exist. Better charts, more accurate ones, are sitting right there in the cabin. And still, when a decision has to be made quickly, the crew reaches for the old map. Not because they think it's more accurate, because it has gotten them home before. It has a track record. The new map, however correct it might be, has none. That's not stupidity. That's not stubbornness either. That's the crew making a completely reasonable bet under pressure, trusting the thing that has already proven it won't sink them over the thing that merely promises it won't. Now here's where this stops being about ships and starts being about you, and where I want you to actually slow down, because this is the part that changes how the whole video lands. Most people, once they notice this pattern in themselves, call it self-sabotage. They assume it means something is wrong with their willpower or their self-esteem or their character. But look again. If your brain's real priority was never happiness, but prediction, then choosing the familiar bad outcome over the unfamiliar good one isn't a failure of some self-control. It's your brain successfully doing exactly the job it was built to do, successfully, not broken. Not failing, that reframes everything you've been calling sabotage. It was never sabotage. It was loyalty. Loyalty to a system that has kept you alive so far, even when that system is now working against the life you're actually trying to build. Say that back to yourself for a second. You haven't been failing to change. You've been succeeding at staying predictable in a body and a brain that has no separate setting for safe and predictable to your brain right now. They're the same word. That's the release worth sitting in for a moment. If you've spent years quietly blaming yourself for repeating a pattern you swore you'd stop, that blame was aimed at the wrong target. You weren't lacking discipline. You are running a system that has never once been told the danger it was designed for has changed or ended, or simply isn't there anymore in the way it used to be. This is where the research actually catches up to what you likely already felt the moment you heard it. The neuroscientist Carl Friston built an entire theory around the idea that the brain's core function is minimizing what he called prediction error, the gap between what it expects and what actually happens. Under that model, your brain isn't a happiness engine. It's a forecasting engine, and forecasting engines are graded on accuracy, not on how good the forecast feels. Daniel Kahneman's research adds another piece. Kahneman and his colleagues found, again and again, that people will frequently choose a certain loss over a probable gain. That certainty itself carries psychological value, independent of the outcome attached to it. A guaranteed disappointment can feel more tolerable than a coin flip towards something better, simply because the coin flip introduces the one thing the brain is least willing to sit inside, not knowing. Neither of these researchers were describing something broken in a small number of people. They were describing something close to universal in how prediction-based minds are built to operate. Yours included, mine included, everyone's included. So here's the motto, stated as simply as I can put it. The brain prefers predictable pain over unpredictable safety because prediction reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty, to a brain built for survival, has always registered as more dangerous than pain itself. And here's why that distinction actually matters for your life, not just your understanding of it. If the problem were happiness seeking gone wrong, the fix would be willpower, trying harder, wanting it more, gritting through the discomfort. But if the real problem is prediction seeking, the fix looks completely different. It isn't about wanting change more. It's about giving your brain enough small, repeated, survivable evidence that the new, uncertain option is actually safe to predict too, so that eventually the new map earns the same trust the old one has, instead of demanding blind faith in something with no track record yet. Go back to the ship one more time. The old map was never loyal to your destination. It was only ever loyal to not sinking. That's all it was built to do, and by that measure, it has never once failed. The coastline moved, the map didn't, and the crew isn't wrong to trust a map that has kept them alive. They simply haven't yet been given a reason to trust anything else the same way. Your brain isn't protecting your past, it's protecting its ability to predict what happens next. Sit with that, because it reframes almost everything that felt like failure a few minutes ago. The silence you keep choosing, the apology you keep leading with, the relationship you keep returning to, the job you keep staying in, none of those are proof that you don't want something different. They're proof that your mind hasn't yet been convinced the different thing is survivable. And convincing a prediction engine takes repetition, not intensity. It takes small, boring, repeatable proof, not one dramatic leap. That changes the question worth asking yourself. Why can't I change? A question that quietly blames you for something you were never fully steering. Instead, what problem is my brain still trying to solve right now with this exact pattern in this exact moment? Once you can name the problem it's solving, you're no longer fighting yourself. You're finally negotiating with the actual thing making the decision. And that leaves a stranger question underneath this one, which is really where this episode has been heading the entire time. If your brain is still protecting patterns built to survive dangers that may not even exist anymore, where did those original patterns come from? Whose expectations, whose reactions, whose approval or disapproval first taught your mind what was dangerous enough to need a map for? That's not a small question. That's the next chart in the cabin, and it's exactly where we're headed next. If any of this landed somewhere real, tell me this. What's one pattern in your life that you know isn't working, but still feels safer than the unknown alternative? I read every comment,